Nothing is more motivating and freeing than transformation, than removing the shackles of the mind. The methodological approach of my coaching is very, very unique because I offer no advice. In fact, we don't analyze anything about your life at all or cause you to go through any kind of traumatic experience or memories. Instead, what we do is we provoke epiphany after epiphany after epiphany. I'm going to take you through this worksheet to explain the methodology because it's one where I replicate my own revelation in the consciousness of another person. And that is why they don't need my advice, because when their consciousness comes online, it gives them a powerful tool of present moment awareness, and it unlocks their own mind and imagination, free from the shackles of fear and repetitive behavioral dynamics that they've been stuck with their entire life. And so we start at the bottom. And so this starts as just a blank sheet of paper, and I draw a line. And this is how it starts. I tell them, listen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you from explaining and analyzing. Now, you're going to be inclined to want to explain things to me, and I'll disrupt you when you do that to refocus you back to the experience. That the process of analyzing disconnects you from the experience, where you try to bury past memories with an understanding, but that understanding is also what you do in those experiences. And so your efforts to understand have been what have blocked your awareness. And so we're going to reacclimate you to your own experience of yourself that doesn't require any thinking on your part. See, your thoughts are always trying to fight your experience. You know, that you feel emotions often that counter reality, like in the example of a guilt trip. Like somebody makes you feel guilty, but you understand that this feeling of guilt really isn't an appropriate emotion, but you're nonetheless dominated by the need to get out of it. So here's how we do it. So I say, do you have any recent memories that you could consider traumatic? You don't have to tell me what they are. I don't need to know any personal details at this time. And they'll say yes. I'll say, okay. So what we want to do, rather than generalizing about the total experience, just find a memory. Just find a moment of real impact, like where something dawned on you, where you're just feeling really stuck, really frustrated, really, really, really upset by something, betrayal, anything like that. Now, do you have that memory in mind? Okay, great. I'm going to start to ask you questions about what you felt. And so what happens here is we start to tease out just the emotions. And this is part of the training too, because I'm also training their mind to get out of analyzing and into being present to their experience. And so this starts to unlock their mind. This actually is something that causes the emergence of access to their memories. And so after I write this list, it's actually quite staggering because nobody would expect that there would be all these different emotions in one single memory. And so that's the first thing that they see. The second thing is I'll ask them, okay, you see these emotions and these feelings? Where else in your life right now does the experience of needing to become good enough or being not good enough show up? And then they'll start to look and they'll be like, by golly, it shows up at work. It shows up with my family right now. It shows up with my fitness. It shows up everywhere. And then they'll say, well, it really doesn't show up here because I feel good enough. And I'll say, oh, you feel good enough in that area, right? Well, how hard did you have to work to get there? Oh, wow. And what motivated you? And then I'll ask, if you zoom out of that career that you know you're good enough within it, you feel good enough at work, is that a comfort zone? Do you feel like your job is good enough for you, even though you're good enough for it? They're like, I don't feel like it's good enough. Exactly. And then we'll go back in time. So I'll say, rather than looking through similar memories to this one trauma, let's just look at the feeling of being not enough, the feeling of confusion, betrayal, not mattering, all of these different emotions. Where else do you see them? And what this is like is this causes an immediate expansion. See, what you find is that the person has been hyper fixated on themselves. It's sort of like being on Google Earth, but zoomed in only to your house and just being unhappy with the roof. But as we zoom out, you start to see this depersonalization where these emotions are everywhere already and you're avoiding them everywhere. And then you get triggered when something happens. Like you're avoiding failure and then something happens, but you're already anxious. You're already nervous about rejection. And so as we zoom out, it's like now we have the whole neighborhood and all the roofs look the same suddenly. And it starts to really unlock the mind. And then as we go back in time without even telling me any details about your life, the person will see this pernicious, pervasive reality that they've always been living into this future, trying to overcome the same emotional dynamics. And so this unlocks their mind. And instead of looking for circumstances, we see that this emotional fingerprint has been dominating every area of life. It doesn't mean that they've always been not good enough, but they felt good enough and then they felt not good enough. And it's like a yo-yo effect. And they're always trying to avoid failure, always trying to avoid, and they're always in some kind of anxiety to get across some finish line. And what happens is then they have this epiphany where suddenly the very first moment that they felt this comes up and they'll be eager to tell me the story. Oh my God, I was 5 and I was there. And then I say, okay, stop. We're going to parcel out that first moment and I'm going to show you something that is going to change your life. And so I say, I need you to just go into that memory and we need to put the emotions, the context, all your adult knowledge to the side, all the terms that you've been taught in psychology, everything that you think you know about the past is blocking your access to the reality of the experience. And there's something here to see. And so I'll say, okay, all I need from you now is exactly what happened in physical reality. Who was there? Where are you? And so they'll just tell me. And here's an example. I was sitting on the stairs. My mom and dad were in the kitchen. My dad yelled at my mom. That was it. That was what happened in physical reality. Then I ask, how did that feel? Oh, I was confused. I felt abandoned, alone, small. And then I write down all those emotions. Now, this is on FaceTime. And then what I'll do is once I write that down, I will turn the camera to the paper. And they will see that that list from whatever adult experience was traumatic is an exact carbon copy of this first moment. Then I'll ask them, I'll say, did not good enough happen to you? Well, yeah, I felt, no. Is that what happened in reality, that you were not good enough? Was you being not good enough why your dad yelled at your mom? No. Well, who said that you're not good enough? Oh, I did. Okay, who said you're broken? I did. And so what we're doing now is the consciousness starts to separate the triggers from objective reality. That these two, up until this moment, have been one and the same for the entire life of this person. That something happens outside of them. Their boyfriend acts like a jerk. They go, I'm not good enough. This happens over there. They feel unwanted. And these automatic trigger reactions improperly define reality. And you find the very moment that this phenomenon started. And then after these emotions are written down, I say, what did you do? How are you going to prevent this from happening? You were confused. I had to figure it out. What did you have to become? I had to be perfect for my mom and dad so this wouldn't happen again. So you figured out to be perfect. I was like, well, how's that going, being perfect in your life? It's not going. Well, what's the one thing you've never been able to become? Perfect. So you've never really been able to be loved. You've never really been good enough, have you? No. I've never really gotten there. I've always tried, but I always have things. There's always something that isn't perfect. So you can never really be perfect. So how could you ever really be good enough? I can't. What's that impact on your life? What's that costing you? And then I list out the cost and the impact. And then we see the vicious circle of figured out be perfect. And then the collapse of that future that you had to invent where you are perfect to give yourself hope. Because as you follow the yellow brick road of your triggers, you actually keep fulfilling them. And so you see the collapse into I can't figure it out. And that's stuck in rumination. And then you rebuild yourself and then start all over again. And then that is where we would let it all go, one by one,